Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr. Today we're going to be taking a look at Strat-O-Matic Baseball and comparing it to my list of must-haves to see how it stacks up. I've done a number of these videos in a series. I did Season Ticket Baseball, History Maker Baseball, Payoff Pitch, and Strat-O-Matic is another game that have a lot of history with and a lot of experience with. So I thought I would do that one next. Now it's a couple of caveats here. It's been a little bit since I've played it regularly. I have played it not too long ago with a friend of mine, Commissioner Dugan, and so I have played Strat-O-Matic enough to know to be reminded of how it is and that kind of thing. But it's not a game that I play regularly currently. That being said, I played it quite a bit throughout my life. It was the first game that I played. Maybe was it the first game? It was probably around the first game that I played for any period of time. And so, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with it. But anyway, the other caveat is that this is my list of must-haves. I completely understand if it's not your list of must-haves. This is just comparing it to, I did a video on my top must-haves. And so this is just comparing it to the must-haves that I talked about in that video. And you can check that video out if you'd like to see more in depth about my list of must-haves. Also, check out the other videos on the other games that I've done that I've compared to my must-haves if you want to check those out as well. The other caveat is since it's been some time since I played it regularly, hopefully I have all of the stuff I'm going to say today accurate, but please correct me down in the comments if I get anything incorrect, because I would love to have that have that come out if I say anything incorrect. So, with all that said, Number one on my list is statistical accuracy. And I would think that most people consider Strat-O-Matic to be a very accurate, very statistically accurate baseball sim. And I agree with that. It feels like real baseball when you're playing. The players that you would expect to do well, do well. The players that you expect not to do well, don't do well, generally speaking. Players perform up to their expectations. And it's pretty statistically accurate, I think. Maybe even more so than some games because with the number of different possibilities, you can really drill down on some of those results. I think at a certain point you get kind of law of diminishing returns, though. Probably percentages are good enough, and Strat-O-Matic, there's 216 different possibilities. Am I right? So, that's more than even 1% included in some of those results. So, yeah, I'd say very statistically accurate game. My number two thing is all plays in the game. And in this case, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the rare play section, I think. But most of the plays are in the game. I mean, pass balls, wild pitches, players can get thrown out at running at a base. There's, so I'd say most things are included. If not, I don't know if it has everything, but there's triple play possibilities. So all plays in the game, I'd say for the most part, it does a pretty good job of that. And again, we'll talk a little bit more in the rare play system later on because that's where most games will have some of those oddball things that don't happen very frequently occur. And Strat-O-Matic doesn't quite have all of that, I don't think. But all plays in the game, I give this one a high grade on that in that regard. Number three is lefty-righty splits. And of course, if you play the advanced or super advanced, Strat-O-Matic does have lefty-righty splits for both the pitcher and the batter. I know I've had comments on other videos that I've done, and there's a little bit of disagreement or whatever you want to call it about whether lefty-righty splits are accurately model real life or not, because it takes so many at-bats or plate appearances for there to be statistical significance to the result. And that doesn't always happen if you're talking about batters against left-handed pitching, for example, especially in a specific season. So I think Strat-O-Matic does a good job of trying to simulate the season in question and not rate the batter's actual abilities, underlying abilities, if that makes sense. So Strat-O-Matic is kind of designed to give you a simulation of their stats that particular season and not the underlying ability of the batters or pitchers in those cases. So I think it's fine. And the lefty-righty splits are fine for that in those cases. Moving on, the other thing I had was base running, and we'll first talk about steals. And this is one where I think if you play the basic game, you're probably not going to get, it's not going to kind of be accurate enough for if you're trying to really get down to steals and that kind of thing, in accuracy with the catcher's arm and that kind of thing. But if you use the advanced or super advanced options, I think you get there for sure. If you're using super advanced, you have to get a jump. Well, you don't have to, but you can work to get a jump. The catcher's arm, the pitcher's hold rating comes into account. And so it does a very good job of, I think, accurately portraying that in specific runner matchups with specific catchers and specific pitchers based on their hold rating and that kind of thing. So I think it does a good job there with steals. They seem to be pretty good. The second part of that, number 5, if you will, is runner advancement. And again, I think if you're using super advanced, runner advancement factors in outfielder arm. It factors in the running speed, which is different, completely different than stealing ability, which I like that that's separated out like that. It factors in where the throw is going. So the super advanced especially gets very much into detail on out situations and that kind of thing, and I think does a good job of encompassing the excitement of trying to see if a runner is going to go for a base or not. The only thing I think that I give it a negative on in terms of both steals and runner advancement is that there is an auto steal or auto runner advancement auto manager suggestion. So you really have to make those human decisions. Some of the other games I've talked about have some kind of auto system, especially if you're playing solo, that can take those decisions out of your hands so that you get more accurate results. Whereas in Strat-O-Matic, you don't have that ability. So I would think, especially as a solo player, there are some players that you're never going to have attempt to steal. You're never going to have them attempt extra base. And the game isn't going to make you have them attempt an extra base. And so you're going to get a little bit of inaccurate results in those cases, because in real life you may have a player that got thrown out, and in Strat-O-Matic you're never going to have them try to even take that base because they're poor runners. So that's the only kind of negative that I would give it. Let's move on to the fielding system. I think Strat-O-Matic does overall a good job, again, if you're using advanced or super advanced, with error ratings and range ratings. And I think it does a pretty good job of coming up with the number of errors that players should have, whether range comes into play, and making you really feel that fielding makes a difference, which again is something that not all games do well. But I think Strat-O-Matic does a pretty good job of making you feel the hurt of having a 4 rated center fielder or something like that, and then getting those center field X chances and having to deal with that. The only thing that I would kind of factor in here is, and this is where, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the X chances, I don't think weigh the shortstop center fielder making more plays. Maybe they do. Maybe they do based on where they fall in the card. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure that it separates that out. But again, other games that I've mentioned, the X chances or fielding chances are pretty equal across positions, and that's not necessarily realistic. I'm not sure about Strat-O-Matic. I haven't delved into those details yet to know if that's true or not. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Stadium effects is next. Stadium effects. And there are, again, if you're playing the more advanced versions of Strat-O-Matic, stadiums do come into play and they alter home runs, which you would expect, and that kind of thing. Now, it's not as detailed as, let's say, season ticket baseball, where the stadium can alter strikeout chances and that kind of thing. But there are stadium effects that modify, especially home runs, is what you would expect. So that certain handed hitters have an easier time hitting home runs in certain ballparks and that kind of thing. So it definitely factors in, and I like that. Rare play system. And here's where I think, I don't know if you want to call it a weakness. There are rare plays in Strat-O-Matic that you can get on the fielding charts. If you roll what, like a 5? Is it a 5 when you roll the 6-sided dice? 3 6-sided dice and you get a 5? I think it's a rare play. But the rare plays are definitely not as varied as they are in some other games. And so because of that, you don't get some of the more oddball plays happen that you would in other games. And again, when I was playing Strat-O-Matic, that didn't really ever bother me, but now that I've played games that have a more robust rare play system, I kind of miss that factor in terms of the rare plays not occurring in Strat-O-Matic, if that makes sense. Again, I know Strat-O-Matic does have rare plays, but it doesn't have the variety of rare plays that some other games do, and I think that's a little bit of a weakness with the system. So because of that, you don't get some of the plays, certain plays that would happen very rarely aren't really included in Strat-O-Matic anywhere for you to for them to come into play. So yeah, rare play system is probably one of the weaknesses. Likewise, next is the injury system. Yes, Strat-O-Matic has injuries, but I've always found that they kind of occur in odd situations. So you can have a strikeout plus injury on some cards. You can have hit by pitch plus injury, which again makes sense. But you don't get like again, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's in the rules somewhere, super advanced rules, and I'm just misremembering. But I don't think you can get a situation where there's a play at the plate and a player gets injured on the play at the plate, or sliding into second on a double play ball. I don't think that ever happens. I think they only come off of the batter's card, and they always occur in weird situations. So a certain batter's only going to have, let's say, hit by pitch plus injury, which means the only time he ever gets injured is when he gets hit by a pitch. So frequency-wise, it's probably fine, but the ways the injuries occur isn't realistic or to my liking, I guess. But again, so we'll call that a little bit of a negative with Strat, even though as I said, frequency I like. And then the last thing on my list is out distribution. And again, I don't think Strat-O-Matic probably does the best job now that I've played some other games and seen how statistically they really can dive down and get the out distribution better. Strat-O-Matic doesn't probably do the best job of that. But I mean, I think like all of the different out types happen, but I don't know that it's really fine tuned in terms of statistics so that they happen at the right frequencies, if that makes sense. I've never really thought about it too much when I've been playing Strat-O-Matic, so maybe it's better at this than I think. And in which case, again, leave some comment down below and let me know if I'm way off base on that one. So those are my top 10. Kind of the intangibles. The other things that aren't necessarily encompassed here that I like to throw in, the card quality isn't the greatest. It's, they're, as anybody who's ever played any amount of Strat-O-Matic can tell you, the cards break down with any amount of playing. So if you're playing a certain team over a course of a season, the cards are going to get faded. They're going to get worn from smudge marks from your fingers. They're going to break down at a pretty quick rate, actually, because the card quality just isn't the greatest. The other thing I'll mention, though, is that overall, it's a fun game that anybody can pick up, especially the basic game. Anybody can pick up and play it within minutes of sitting down. So in that regard, it's very, very newbie friendly, if you will, to being able to play it. And the fun factor is definitely there. I have a blast playing Strat-O-Matic. Again, that was pretty much the only thing I used to play. And I always had a blast playing it. And so the fun factor is definitely there, even though, as I said, there are a couple things that I would say are a little bit of a negative with the game. Overall, the quality and statistical accuracy and everything is way up there, and it's a very enjoyable game to play. I've had a ton of fun playing it, and so yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I would love to hear what your thoughts on Strat-O-Matic are down below. Does it scratch all of the itches in your must-haves? Are there things that are missing that you wish were there? Or have you kind of moved away from Strat-O-Matic and gotten into other games? That's what I've kind of found that I've done is right now I have 2 projects going on. If you head over to baseballmaelstrom.com, you can follow both of those projects. One is a Payoff Pitch Season 2 of my Payoff Pitch League. And the other one is a Best of the 30s tournament featuring season ticket baseball. So you can check those out. Who knows, maybe sometime in the future I'll have a Strat-O-Matic project, but currently I don't. But yeah, let me know what you think down below. Thanks so much for coming by and watching, and until next time, have a great evening.